Thank you. Please remain standing while the chaplain says a few words.
Good evening. Just going to read a verse of the Bible to you. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. That particular scripture Jesus mentioned after his disciples had been squabbling over who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom. Many years ago, as a young man emerging from university into the harsh world of commercial industry, I quickly had to learn the rules of survival. I managed that, and as I progressed and was promoted, leadership became a key issue and one that I struggled to grasp. What makes a good leader? Field Marshal William Slim, in a 1962 lecture, said he believed good leadership to be a combination of courage, willpower, judgment, flexibility, knowledge and integrity. These are highly laudable attributes, I'm sure. In my own situation, I was also strongly encouraged to develop self-confidence, assertiveness, decisiveness, self-promotion, a willingness to confront, ambition, being goal-orientated, and perhaps a certain amount of ruthlessness. These are fine. We all need some of these attributes, but they can create so much pressure, tension, and rivalry. And when one trips up and falls, it can be a painful process, as I discovered to my own detriment. When I was able to consider the possibility of servant leadership as a practical way of going forward, the pressure seemed to melt away and a new set of attitudes and attributes became my vocabulary. For the good of the whole, your good at my expense, the power of listening, empathy, humility, seeing both sides of an argument, the ability and willingness to make a U-turn if necessary, things like that. I further discovered that in the longer term, doing things this way was actually far more effective. In God's economy, the way up is down. Can we just pray? Father God, do just want to thank you for everyone in this room who serves. Father, thank you for the way they give their time and energy to serve this town, the people of this town. Pray as they gather together to debate, maybe disagree. Just pray for your presence in this room. Pray, Lord, that in that debate there'll be good nature, good temper, and out of that, Lord, we'll have some really constructive decision making to push this town forward. We just pray your blessing here tonight, the peace of God, the presence of God, in a way that will be tangible. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, is everybody seated and ready for us to begin? Good. First item, to receive apologies for absence. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I lodge apologies for Councillor Capon and Councillor Simon Mahaffey? Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Ashfield is stuck in traffic, but he's on her way.
Councillor James. Very good. Are there any declarations of interest from any items on our agenda? Yes, Councillor Hussey.
Item 8 on the future of the golf club. Wish to declare a non-pecuniary interest. I will stay for the debate, but I would ask for my vote of abstention to be recorded. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Pecuniary interest on item 8, and when it's debated I'll be leaving the chamber.
Councillor Cousins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 15, the motion on football pitches. My son participates in football which uses council pitches and pay that fee.
Thank you. Councillor Phillimore.
Yes, Madam Mayor, same again. 15, motion on football pitches. I am a hirer and also let football pitches in Overton and Basingstoke.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For a pecuniary interest in item 8, Basingstoke Golf Course, and a personal interest in item 15, my son plays football, so I will leave the room on that one as well. Thank you.
Right, lots of interest everywhere. Is that everybody? Oh, no. Councillor Taylor.
There you go, sorry. We've got interest in the motion on the charges for the football pitches as I'm a coach of Winkerby Wizards. So I'll be stepping out.
Thank you. Right, next item is to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of July 2019, pages 7 to 26. Are we all agreed? Yes, thank you very much. Announcements. I think the Chief Executive doesn't have any announcements, so I'll forge ahead. First of all, a few welcomes. Can I welcome our new Deputy Chief Executive and Head of Borough Development, Ian Boll, who's sitting over here. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Secondly, welcome to our new councillor, Councillor Chris Tomlin, who was elected as an independent at the recent by-election to represent the Bramley and Sheffield ward. Welcome back. Thank you. And finally, I'd just like to welcome a group of students who are here on work experience from the town of Tonnisvorst, near Düsseldorf in Germany. They came here on their first day to meet some of us and learn a bit about Basingstoke and the way we run. We had a very good time together, and they thought it might be interesting to come to at least the first bit of one of our council meetings. You can leave whenever you like, and we hope you enjoy it. And here we go. Wir hoffen, dass dies eine interessante Erfahrung ist. You don't know if I said that right anyway, do you? Okay. I'd just like myself to say thank you to everyone who came to the Basingstoke Variety Show a couple of weeks ago. It was a roaring success, at least it was from my point of view, and demonstrated some amazing local talent, from a samba band to a dog pirate act. See what you missed? Anyway, there's a second show coming up in March, in which the massed choirs of Basingstoke will, amongst other items, be singing Verdi's Anvil Chorus in the Anvil. So you've just got to come. Put March the 7th in your diaries. That will be brilliant, I promise you. And my final announcement is a very special one, and very important one. We're welcoming back our long-serving past councillor, Marilyn Tucker, who stood down in May. Marilyn came to receive her award at the last council meeting, but we omitted to give her opportunity to speak, and I do apologise for that, Marilyn. But I'm delighted that you've agreed to come again tonight and share a few words. So, Marilyn, do come to the microphone. I know Marilyn is always saying that her legs take a time to decide to move.
Thank you. Thank you again, Madam Mayor, if I can see you, for my certificate, which is looking very attractive in its new frame, given to me by my daughter Sarah. Thank you also for allowing me to come this evening to publicly express my thanks to you for the certificate, to add my thanks again to the Conservative group for their gifts to me when I reached 40 years service, and to say my final goodbyes to everyone, both members and officers. The reason for standing for the borough are not always political. Sorry, is there a problem? Sorry. With me, my husband and I had not long moved to Silchester when we discovered the CEGB wanted to bring 3 400 kV pylon lines out of the switching station in the Bramley Frith, one to run across the field in front of our house. Can they do that, we asked, being ignorant. We're not quite so ignorant now. So battle commenced, and as a result I was asked to stand for the parish and the district, as the borough was then. So it was not politics that got me involved, but pylonitis. And 43 years later, here I am. Another bête noire of mine has been, and still is, ragwort. I have been known to bring along to our summer council meetings some freshly picked ragwort, wearing, of course, some rubber gloves. This year, i.e. today, I have brought a sample reminder of one of the notices that the borough printed for me during my mayoral year. For those of you who are unaware of the poisonous nature of this weed, let me explain. Grazing animals such as equines, donkeys and bovines like eating it, particularly attracted to it when it's dead. And unfortunately it affects their liver and can kill them. Some people unwittingly try to clear ragwort from their fields by pulling it up, but don't wear gloves, and their livers can also be affected seriously. Therefore, Madam Mayor and Councillors, my last plea to you all must be to ask you not to forget ragwort can kill, and to please continue to remind the residents of our lovely rural borough that this attractive yellow flower can injure or kill, and should be cleared from their fields should not be cleared from the fields without wearing protective gloves. Lastly, I wish to share with you something that was given to me by my very dear family friend to help me with my council work. It is the rule of John Wesley. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, to all the people you can. Thank you, and best wishes to you all.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. That was a unique speech. Ragwort and John Wesley. Fantastic. Thank you so much. we do all wish you very, very well. We really do. Thank you. Item 5, we have one question from a member of the public for the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Natural Environment. Heather Rainbow, would you like to just come to the microphone and give your question, please? Thank you.
Madam Mayor and Councillors, I have one question from Cycle Basingstoke. Please can you amend paragraph 7.16 of the Golf Course SPD and replace the final sentence with which reads, it will be necessary to ensure that development responds to the different needs of walkers and cyclists, and where possible, cycle routes should be segregated from walking routes. Replace this with, development must respond to the different design requirements for cycling versus walking. In particular, cycle routes along roads should be bilateral, fully protected from motor traffic, and separate from any footway. In our opinion, different needs of walkers and cyclists is ambiguous. Different design requirements for walking versus cycling would be clearer, and refer to specific design guidelines. Segregated often means a white line on the footway, but it is still shared use. Where possible is redundant if you use the word should, and weakens the strength of the statement. It will be necessary to ensure that development responds could be replaced by development must respond. This does not change the meaning, but shortens the sentence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fell.
Ron. Madam Mayor, thank you. Can I thank Heather Rainbow for her question? Can I thank her for giving us advance notice and so that the officers can consider the question? And together we have a response which has been shared with her, and I understand she's content with it. Can I ask you, Madam Mayor, and for members to turn to page 64? That's the large print page 64 of our council papers. Page 64. And there they will see 7.16. And they will see, Madam Mayor, and you will see that it's the underlined sentence, it will be necessary, that Heather Rainbow has made suggestions about, and because of course that was adjusted in the first place, hence it being underlined. And I will be making the following amendment when we come to debate this, but if you can take it now that in response, that so I don't have to say it again. And these would be the wording. Development, and it's much in line with what she said, but it's a slight tweak. Development must respond to the different design requirements for cycling versus walking. Where possible, and in particular along strategic routes, cycle routes along roads should be bilateral, fully protected from motor traffic, and separate from any footway. So that's my response to her question, and can I thank her for it?
Thank you very much. That's really satisfactory. Heather, would you have a supplementary question, or is that okay for you?
Thank you very much indeed. It's good to collaborate.
Thank you very much. Right, obviously we will return to that later. Let's move on to petitions. There are no petitions. Item 7, resignations and appointments.
Do you want to do item 9 first?
Yes. Yes. As this council's political balance changed as a result of the recent by-election in Bramley and Sherfield, we'll take item 9 first. So if we could turn to item 9 and look at the allocation of seats to political groups. Now, if I could refer you to the separate report that you've got with your update papers entitled Allocation of Seats to Political Groups. And if I could refer you to the last page, page 5, you'll find the proposed allocation of seats, which I understand has been agreed by the group leaders. Yes? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are content with it.
Thank you. Nods around? Okay, thank you. So the recommendation which we're looking at tonight, which can be found on the front page of that report, is that we approve this allocation of seats. And as before, the composition of Standards Committee departs from political proportionality. In other words, there will be one councillor from each group on the committee. Is that agreed? Thank you. So we can now move back to item 7, which is going to look at the more specific details of what we do with our committees. Okay, so these reappointments will be as a result of the reallocation that we've just agreed. On the update sheet, we have a list of adjustments which take into account the change in proportionality, and I'll take it by committee. Okay, so the first committee, Development Control, the proposal is that Councillor Mahaffey as a member and Councillor Edwards as a substitute resign, and Councillor Tomlin as a member and Councillor Tilbury as a substitute be appointed. Are we agreed? Right, on the Many Down Overview Committee, Councillor Carruthers as a member and Councillor Court as a substitute resign. Councillor Tomlin as a member and Councillor Reid as a substitute be appointed. Agreed? Agreed, thank you. On the Standards Committee, Councillor Reid to be replaced by Councillor Tilbury and Councillor Tomlin to be appointed as a substitute. Agreed? On CEP, Councillor Reid to be appointed as committee member and Councillor Tilbury to become substitute in her place. Agreed? On Human Resources, Councillor Tomlin to replace Councillor Tilbury as substitute and Councillor Edwards to be appointed to the committee. Agreed? So we now need to appoint a new chair of Human Resources following the departure of Councillor Rowland. Do we have any nominations for the chair of Human Resources? Councillor Rattigan.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Laura Edwards for the position.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Putty. Any other? Yes, Councillor James.
I'd like to nominate Councillor John Mackay.
And a seconder? Councillor. Got it.
I didn't catch that.
Okay, that's it. So we've got 2 nominees, so we will go for a straight vote. Could you raise your hands, please, if you would like to vote for Councillor Laura Edwards as Chair of Human Resources? Okay, you can put your hands down. Sorry about that, but we are required by the monitoring officer to do a recorded vote. So get ready for a recorded vote, please. So once again, I think we're ready. Once again, it's just going to be straightforward. I'll just ask the one question, which is all in favour of Councillor Laura Edwards, and it will be assumed that those who aren't in favour are in favour of Councillor Mackay. No?
We'll do 2 separate votes.
We'll do 2 separate votes. Okay, thank you. Right, first vote ready? All those in favour of Councillor Laura Edwards? Has everybody who wants to vote voted? There's 10 people, 8 people. Okay. Just so that you know exactly how we're going to do it, 2 people haven't voted yet, and I understand that we will count just the yes votes, so the number of yes votes for each nominee is quite important. So can you just finish voting if you want to? Okay, we'll close the vote then, and the number of yes votes, as you see, for Councillor Edwards is 27. We'll now go to the next vote. All those in favour of Councillor Mackay as Chair of the Human Resources Committee? And again, we're only counting yeses. Is everybody who wants to vote yes, have they voted? Yes? Okay, thank you. That's 27 votes for Councillor Edwards, 14 for Councillor Mackay. So Councillor Edwards is the chair, voted in as chair of the Human Resources Committee. Thank you. Now, we have one or two outside bodies to elect people to, so that's on page 27 of your order papers. Have you found that? Right, we have one vacancy for a representative on Carla the Arts. This is a one-year appointment. Are there any nominations for Carla the Arts? No? Okay, we'll pass on that for now. There's one vacancy to join Councillor Gardner on the North Hampshire Area Road Safety Council. This is another one-year appointment. Are there any nominations? Councillor Rattigan.
Madam Mayor, can I nominate Councillor Nick Robinson for the position?
Seconded? Councillor Harvey.
Councillor McCormick, please.
Seconded? Is that seconded? Councillor? I'm advised we can do this one by a show of hands. So could you raise your hands, please, if you would like to vote for Councillor Nick Robinson as the representative on the North Hampshire Area Road Safety Council? Have we got a number? You can put your hands down. Thank you. Can you raise your hands if you'd like to vote for Councillor McCormick? Thank you very much. You can put your hands down. Councillor Robinson received 26 votes. Councillor McCormick received 30 votes. So Councillor McCormick has been elected. Thank you. Right, at the last council meeting there was a little bit of confusion which resulted in Councillors Cubitt and Goadson being appointed as trustees of Basingstoke Charities, which looks after our almshouses, when they are in fact trustees of Basingstoke Common, which is a quite different charity. So could we correct this by confirming that the actual trustees of Basingstoke Charities are Councillor Sean Keating, Mr Evans, Mr Connor and Mrs M Payne? Is that okay? And finally, we have the Whitchurch Youth Centre Trust. The current representative is Councillor Chloe Ashfield. Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually understand that the trust is dormant at the moment, but were it to be active, then Councillor Ashfield would like to continue. So while putting forward a nomination, we are conscious that the actual trust itself is not actually meeting. It is inactive at this time.
So we have a new nomination for Councillor Ashfield. Is that seconded? Yes, Councillor? Are we agreed? Thank you. That's Councillor Ashfield. Moving on, number 8 on the agenda, the adoption of the Basingstoke Golf Course Development Brief Supplementary Planning Document, which is on pages 29 to 130 of the order paper. And this is a recommendation from the Cabinet meeting held on the 8th of October. Councillor Offell.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that we adopt the Basingstoke Golf Course Development Brief Supplementary Planning Document. I'm sure someone will second me. Yes, Councillor Robinson has. This is a very important document. SPDs are material considerations in our planning process. And when we created the local plan, we said that we wanted to have SPDs for all of our larger sites. And when we pass this shortly, which I anticipate we will, this objective will have been achieved. This site came to us with the proposal for an outline planning permission quite out of the blue, which meant that we didn't have an SPD in place. And I, together with the ward councillors, insisted with our officers and indeed with the prospective developer that we were going to get an SPD in place before the planning process was completed. And that has been achieved too, due to the officers moving at high speed to make that happen. So I'd like to thank all of those who've contributed to the shape of the SPD, the ward councillors, the local residents and interested groups. I'd like to thank the developer Bloor Homes for their engagement. I should just say that doesn't in any way count as any endorsement of any proposals that they have, but what it does do is meant that we, unlike other SPDs, we've actually had, as it were, a planning application process working in tandem with the SPD, so in a sense it's being tested against real and live proposals rather than perhaps being slightly theoretical. And as a result, it's a much stronger and much better and much more valuable and useful document. Madam Mayor, I have 2 amendments to make, the first of which is in line with what Heather Rainbow asked in paragraph 7.16, which I've outlined, and I know that Democratic Services have a note of that, and they certainly will if they haven't found it by the end of today. If members ask me, or through you, Madam Mayor, to repeat it, I will, but I hope that I can take it that they understood it at the time. The second amendment comes from Councillor Hussey. Can I again thank him for using the very wise method of notifying various people, including myself and the relevant officers, in advance of full council of a particular amendment. It's not actually particularly grave and weighty, but he felt it was only right to have the clarification, and I agree. So the amendment is on paragraph, here we go, paragraph 5.24, which is set out on page 56. Page 56, paragraph 5.24, and it's the penultimate line says in the northwest corner of the site, and the amendment is to change it in the northernmost part of the site, because there isn't really no northwest corner. There's a northern corner-ish, it's sort of a bit rounded. So he's quite properly said that it should be, instead of saying northwest corner, it should say northernmost part of the site. And so I move that as well at the same time. So it's my great pleasure to move this recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Unless anybody wants to debate on this, can I move that we agree this with the 2 amendments that Councillor Offell has just suggested? Agreed? Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Hussey. Yes, thank you. Right, moving on to, we've already done 9, we'll move on to item 10. The Polling Districts and Polling Stations Review 2019 to 2020. This is a report of the Returning Officer and the Electoral Registration Officer. Page 137 to 242 of your agenda book. I've just got a word of explanation that I'll read out, just in case it's helpful to you. This has been given to me to read. This is a report from the Returning Officer who has the statutory responsibility to ensure that all those who are eligible to vote can vote and to administer elections accurately, so that the will of the people is reflected in the results announced. This report describes the process for undertaking the required 5-yearly review of polling districts and polling places, including consultation with MPs, borough councillors, town and parish councils, and those responsible for managing existing polling places. Taking account of consultation responses, the returning officer has put forward recommendations which, on balance, he and his staff believe provide the most appropriate outcome for ensuring polling places are well located within polling districts. Noting, of course, that next year we will move from 29 wards to 18 wards as a result of the recently completed electoral review. In undertaking the review, the returning officer has rejected the option of leaving things unchanged, as this would not achieve the overall purpose of the review to ensure the accessibility of polling places. I therefore formally move this report.
I'll second it.
Thank you. That's seconded by Councillor Cubitt. Are we agreed? Thank you very much. Item 11, the appointment of temporary councillors to Mapledurwell and Upnateley Parish Council. The report says that this parish council became inquorate due to resignations and in order to continue, need this temporary measure. So the recommendation, which is on page 243, I'll read it for you so that we know what we're voting about. That authority be delegated to the monitoring officer to make the necessary order to appoint temporary parish councillors to Mapledurwell and Upnateley Parish Council until such time as an election or co-option can be held and those elected or co-opted have taken office. And that the head of law and governance be delegated authority to make orders under section 91 of the Local Government Act 1972 to appoint temporary parish or town councillors where a parish or town council has become inquorate. So this also covers potential similar problems in the future. I will move this from the chair as well.
And second it.
And seconded by Councillor Cubitt. Are we agreed on this as well? Agreed, thank you. Item 12, extensions to appointments of independent standards assessors. This recommendation can be found on page 247 of your order papers. It basically is to extend the appointments of Peter Moore and Liz Morris pending recruitment, to give the monitoring officer authority to extend the appointment of Keith Bastin and Chris Evans if required, to give the monitoring officer authority to confirm the appointment of 2 independent persons and 2 independent standards assessors and report these to the next council meeting. And we are also asked to approve the revised recruitment arrangements set out in paragraph 3 of the report. Once again, unless you want a debate, I'll move this from the chair.
And I'll second it.
And it's again seconded by Councillor Cubitt. Is that agreed? Thank you. Next, item 13 is the calendar of meetings for 2020-2021, which can be found on page 251 and is very clear. So I just will ask you to especially note that the annual council meeting, which is the mayor making, will be held on Tuesday, the 19th of May, followed just 2 days later by the selection meeting on Thursday, the 21st of May. This is so that we can get our new committees quickly in place following the all-out elections. We will also, I'm told, have to hold 2 April development control meetings, as the election will preclude them from meeting in May. So if there are no problems, oh yes, Councillor James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a major problem, certainly I wouldn't oppose it, but I've been assured by the Leader of the Council that there's going to be a strong look at the Audit Accounts Committee. Currently sits at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, making it very difficult for those of us who work to be able to attend that meeting. And clearly we want all meetings to be as open to the public as possible, so it should be in the evening like all other council meetings. I appreciate there is some concern around how possible that is with the officers that come to the meeting and the agencies we use, though I do note that having gone through councils locally, Winchester City Council has audit in the evening, and so does Eastleigh Council have it in the evening. I appreciate their Lib Dem Council, so much better, but I also checked, and Rushmore and actually Hearts and Lib Dem Council as well now, there's so many, and they have it in the evening as well. But Rushmore, which is Conservative, also has it in the evening, so if we can't do it, it means we're saying we're more rubbish than all those councils, and I'm sure we're not. So I look forward to coming back in December with confirmation that audit is now moved to 6:30 in the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In agreeing with that point in regard to the Audit and Accounts Committee, we also consider HR, because both of them do meet in the afternoon, and the idea of them meeting in the evening would be appropriate. I'm conscious the council leader's already suggested that that's being looked at. And may I ask the returning officer to give us an update at some point on when the election count might be? I appreciate that's a negotiation that's probably taking place with the Police and Crime Commissioner, but as members we would appreciate any information on that as soon as it is possible.
So can we agree to this calendar of meetings, but with the proviso that we ask the group leaders to look at the timing of audit and accounts and human resources with a view to changing the timing of that? And if you've got any opinions, just to feed those opinions to your group leader so that you can all be heard. So can I move that we accept the calendar of meetings with those to be revised? Thank you very much. Seconded. There was a seconder as well. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Taylor?
No.
Oh, Councillor...
Yes. Sorry. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Sorry for I didn't quite catch your attention. We seem to be very light on CEP meetings, and I just wondered if that could be explained.
Okay, I understand that it's the same number as usual. But to be honest with you, if there's a lot to discuss, they'll slip an extra one in anyway. Okay, are we agreed? Yes? Thank you. Right, we've got two motions to come now. The first one is street cleansing. And can I ask Councillor Colin Regan, please, to give us his details of it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a word for the Gazette. I'm here. Also got a confession to make. I'm a Conservative. Don't get too excited. Let me explain. I first became a Conservative about 40 years ago when there was tax upon the public service. So I joined the Labour Party to defend the NHS, welfare state, BBC, even TU trade union rights, but above all, the public realm and the old public service ethos. And I went on to help fight against the last 10 years of austerity, the cuts to police numbers. Now they seem to have forgotten that, but, you know, and we'd like to thank Boris today for unifying Ireland. And also the street lights, and above all, I will raise this, obviously the attack upon public toilets. I mean, why we shut so many public toilets? Us older men need them. Public service means bins being emptied on time, not waiting 3 weeks for a doctor's appointment. Also, public service also means public housing, real affordable rents, not sold off council houses that to buy to let, just to enrich landlords. Privatisation is an outsourcing means the price of everything and the value of nothing, and the destruction of public service, especially the public service ethos. This has come after 10 years of austerity, and even this rich council has been affected by it. So I wanted to conserve a decent standard of care for our estates. My estate has been neglected by the Tory administration for a number of years. There are weeds making the estate look like Tumbleweed Connection. This summer's been exceptionally bad. And if you look at our latest Southam masterpiece of a newsletter, you'll see photographs of the leaflets there, blaming you. And also overhanging bushes, blocked footpaths, plus shrubs totally ignored and growing out of control. Now we come to the part of the motion, the bin and broom service. The streets have become unacceptably grubby, especially since the mobile fan service was introduced in April. I don't blame the staff. They need extra resources. The staff always get the rough end. Above all, my constituents want a return of bin and broom service. My constituents have seen too many cuts to public services to austerity over the last 10 years, and a fake Queen's speech cannot turn that round. To reinforce the broom To restore the bin and broom round would not only bring cleaner streets, but a valuable symbol of the public service and the public realm. Yes, I'm a Conservative. I now call on my Tory Conservatives to support my motion and restore the bin and broom service and rebuild the public realm and the public service ethos. I move the motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Keating, do you want to speak now or later? I've only got one other speaker so far, I have to say. Later? Okay. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as a point of information, I've got a community litter pick that I regularly do in Brighton Hill. It's coming up this Saturday morning and you're all cordially invited to help out. I get regular comments from members of the public, why am I going out leading a community litter pick? I know that there are plenty of other parts of Basingstoke that also have community litter picks, and I want to pay tribute to those volunteers. And they go out, you know, all times a year doing their bit to make the town and wider borough a nicer area to live in. Should we really have to do that? Well, I'm afraid we have. I think our job's being made harder by the recent changes, not least in some of the new town estates, which have got large networks of footpaths and grassy areas that are hard to access from a van, and many roads that suffer from poor parking, so that impedes the van access. I think we also need to look in approving this motion at strengthening some of our trial partnership arrangements like we had in Southam and Buckskin with Sovereign Housing Association, and take that to the other housing associations like Vivid and the Guinness Trust and the various others. We've got about 23 in the borough to manage our open spaces and keep them litter free. We've all seen David Attenborough, we've seen the problems with plastics in the environment. If a piece of plastic is dropped in a car park, it will become shredded, it will get down a drain, it will go into our water system and it will end up in the sea. Litter is never any good for wildlife. Not least, my colleague Councillor Regan has also talked about the impression that it generates of the borough, both residents living here and for people who are visiting. One of the most frustrating things I found, I'm sure you all have as well, is where we have fragmented ownership and we have private landowners of shops and things that aren't doing their bit to help clear up litter, not least because of the the unsightliness of it, and we should be working in partnership with them, and if they're not doing their job we should be levying fines on them, and we should also be a bit more proactive about levying fines where people are dropping litters in public places covered by CCTV. So I'm more than happy to support this motion, and I welcome anyone else who's got any comments to get in touch with me after this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Laura James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion is about looking at the service that we did have in relation to the broom service, and whether in the review, if we take this to CEP, what are the issues. And the concerns that we have in Norden is that there are areas within Norden that machinery can't go down, so it makes it very difficult to access those areas, so they're not being swept. And I think lots of people in relation to that service miss the face of those litter pickers, and they knew them and they recognised them. They were an important part of the community, and people were able to raise issues and identify problems they had. So I think that's an important part of this service. So in the review, I welcome looking at that. But also, I think what I also think, if you look at the budget over the last 5 years and the number of people that we've actually employed in this service, there's not been an increase, which is of grave concern. We saw the core budget actually reduce significantly. We've seen commuted sums go up by £250,000, and for me, the concern is, though that we actually took money from developers for commuted sums, we didn't see an increase
in the number of people that are actually delivering the service. But we did see a 3.5% increase in the actually built environment in which people are having to work. So we've seen a significant increase. I think it was 2,500 properties additional to that. So their work that they're having to do is greatly increased with less people. And the budget hasn't increased. We're told that there's efficiencies. So what I would like to look at in some detail when this goes to CEP is those efficiencies, because the reality for lots of people across the urban ward, and I don't know if it's the same for the rural wards, I'm sure it is, that there is still a significant amount of litter. And if you ask people, are they happy with the service, I'm sure that they would say they weren't. So I ask people to actually take this back to CEP, let's look at it again and just see whether there's things that we could do differently. I think it's important, and it's been said tonight, that this isn't a criticism of the staff and those operatives that are doing the work. It's just that we need a lot more of them, because the reality is they're under-resourced and they're being stretched. But the other thing that I think is important as part of this review, is it ethical to be taking commuted sums from developers for the delivery of services when we see our core funding go down at the same time. So we're seeing a reduction in funding in these areas, but we're taking funding from commuted sums, so it's topping up what we're delivering. Surely that can't be right. I just think that is not ethical, and I wonder what developers would think when they're actually paying into that pot. But we need to see much more. The environment in which we live is poor and it needs to improve. The litter is one aspect of what we want to see in the Labour group, and there's so much more that we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eaches.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to be clear, the barrows were withdrawn in April primarily to provide an improved facilities for around 25 staff due to a number of health and safety issues. Previously, non-town centre barrow operatives worked alone. They were operating from small lockups or garages. These staff had limited access to welfare facilities. They worked for long periods in isolation and worked outside in all weathers. They were pushing a barrow around all day, which required high levels of physical effort and therefore limited the range of equipment that could be stored on the barrow. Operatives now work as part of a team and are based at one of the main council depots. This means they have access to a full range of welfare facilities, they have daily contact with their supervisor and improve access to a manager. They are now vehicle-based, and being vehicle-based means operatives have protection from weather and have benefited from air conditioning and the water they can carry on board during hot weather, especially like the hot weather we experienced over this summer. The feedback from operatives has been positive. Most of the ex-barrow operatives work in the same area as they did previously. So to say that we've withdrawn the service and people are missing that face around it's incorrect, because the service is still being provided. We've not taken commuted sums and we're not providing the service. The service is being provided, but in a much better way and in a much more efficient way. So for example, you're a barrow operative walking along every day, you get a call to say that there's a fly tip or some litter a mile away. It would take most of your day to go there to get back to your usual area. Now they can hop in the van, they can react to residents and queries, and they can deal with it there and then. So it's actually an improvement to the service, an investment in the service, and not a reduction in the service. Like I say, the same is still being done, and in fact it's a better way of doing it, allowing them to do more things. And obviously there are some new barrow operatives, or what used to be barrow operatives, working in different areas, but as they come more used to their areas, the service will become even more efficient, because it has only been running since April. The mobile teams provide more flexibility and, as I said, responsiveness to address problems as they arise and enable more efficient deployment of resources. And the level of litter complaints via the WREN system, which I had checked for the last 12 months, is 177 compared to 197 during the previous 12-month period. The number of complaints in Norden and Winklebury for the 6-month period since the changes were implemented are 14 and 11 compared to 27 and 23 for the 6 months beforehand. So I don't think our streets are too bad, and we're doing all we can investing in the service. I find the operations team a very important service, and we're certainly not downgrading that service in any way. So just on the motion, I don't agree that the withdrawal of the broom and street cleaning service is wrong. I think it's a positive step forward. I think it's better for the team. But if Council wants to debate that further at CEP, then I'm happy for you to do that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Konitsko, I think for the first time.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yes, it is my first time. I'd like to speak in favour of a review of the new street cleaning arrangements. I undertook a survey of Brighton Hill residents over the summer to find out what they value in the area, but also to see what we can do to make things better for them. And street cleaning was one of 3 areas that kept cropping up repeatedly. So this is clearly something that residents have spotted, and it's also something that they think is important. So with that in mind, I met with a number of officers over the summer to find out what we can do to resolve the situation. They told me that there had indeed been a few issues with the new mobile van service, but that was mainly down to the fact that there was a lack of operatives because of the summer holidays. They also told me about some of the benefits that the new system was expected to bring, such as allowing groups of operatives to join together in hit squads that would do litter blitzes to give areas a really thorough clean. And sure enough, a few weeks later, on a sunny Friday morning in Brighton Hill, a team of 8 came together and managed to collect 40 bags of rubbish, plus, rather bizarrely, a rabbit hutch. So Brighton Hill residents have seen the new service at its best, but they've also identified a number of issues with it. So in my view, a review of the arrangements to assess how well they're operating, to build on the things that are working well, and Councillor Eachus has mentioned some of those, to investigate what can be done to improve matters, and also, as Councillor James has pointed out, to make sure that this is properly resourced would seem to me to be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say it should be reviewed, because I think across the borough people are complaining it's not as good. What always amazes me is we go into the town, especially in the summer, it looks quite nice, doesn't it? I'm afraid to say most people don't live in the town, they live outside, and that's where they want to see the cleaning done. Now, when we did have a guy on the barrows in my ward, he didn't just sweep up, he was there, someone to talk to, someone to explain what is happening in the area. It was a good opportunity, one for the borough, for the council, because he's getting the point of view across what is happening, where it's happening. And when they talk about health and safety, which we want to see everybody in a good position, we've got community centres on our estates. They could be open for them for use of toilets and drinking facilities. There is ways round. We need to look at this and put some money into it. In these last few years, we've been kidding ourselves saying, aren't we doing well? You know, everything's the same. Well, it isn't. We found that, well, I found that out recently where I had an old couple, nothing to do with sweeping up, infested with rats in their garden. We couldn't clear it up. We don't do it anymore. They had to pay privately, even though it wasn't their rats, it happened to be in their garden. Years ago, that would have been sorted. We need to get down to the basics again. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to just say very quickly that while I appreciate what Councillor H was saying, that there has been a big review in the way that the bin and broom the borough and broom has been changed. I'd just like to say that I welcome a review as a member of CEP of the motion, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say in relation to Winkleberry, I know for a fact, because I've been contacted by residents, that there is an issue with rubbish there. They think that the team, they're doing a great job as they can, but there are areas that they just cannot get into with the mobile van or whatever that's dropping them off. They're not able to get up on the banks or, whatever, and take the rubbish back. It has become a problem that we've actually instigated our own litter pick, and every time we do a litter pick, we're collecting between 20 and 25 bags full of rubbish. So it just shows that it does need a review. It does need looking at. Nobody's denying that they're doing a great job, but they're not being able to get into the areas that they were before for whatever reasons, and it does, needs to be looked at, and especially in my area, because I can only talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think anybody wants to stand and in any way criticise the work that the teams do. But listening to the teams and listening to residents, you get to appreciate that, one, the teams are stretched to try to meet the demands that are put on them by residents asking them to do things in a way that they can't because they're rushing round to get round their rounds because they have targets to meet of their own in terms of reporting back and doing the work they do. They just physically can't cover the ground. The issue is that we've asked, obviously, because we want budget savings as have been pushed through the council over the past few years, and they haven't been immune to that. They've been a service that have had to find efficiency savings. Well, they found those efficiency savings to a reduction in service standards, in all honesty, on our estates and across the wards, across our borough. Not through the fault of their own, not necessarily through this council not wanting them to deliver the standard, just because they physically can't cover the ground. And there is an issue with the new housing that we are building, because we have taken those commuted sums to be used to support that new housing. But the reality of the budget position at the moment is we're having to use that money to plug the hole in the budget that we've created because of the efficiency savings. So actually what we've wound up with is almost a reduction based upon losing full-time FTEs out of the service. We've actually had a reduction in FTEs, but we haven't seen a commensurate increase in capacity to cope with all the new housing coming on. And we've got to get into that position, I think, of being very careful not to fool ourselves into thinking, well, we've got better machines, or we've got more efficient ways of doing it, that alone will improve the service standard. So the lads come along and they cut a bush back. Well, the lads that cut the bush back and box cut it then expose all the rubbish that's been underneath it that no one's collected for months and months and months, because the street cleaners haven't got anywhere near it. And our lads have come along and exposed it because they've done their part of the job by doing the grounds maintenance and thoroughly exposed all the rubbish that was there for months and months. We've got areas and pathways that are never swept because they can't get the machines down them. But nobody else goes there to sort it out. It's just left to accumulate because nobody else goes down those pathways other than the residents who see it day in, day out, day in, day out. They live with it day in, day out. There is land between Vivid and Sovereign and the county and ourselves where we need to balance out whose land ownership is in this as well. And that's a battle. Forever being asked, well, it's a bit of GIS. Well, who owns that bush then? Who owns that piece of pathway? You're fighting over it. Well, I can stand in the borough bit. If I step across to the next piece of paving, I'm in the county council bit. But nobody's sweeping the county council bit because the lads are doing the borough bit, and that's it. There's a whole range of issues that need to be thought about in the quality of what we're delivering as a service. It isn't just the borough, but the borough has a very critical role to play in it. So a review, I think, needs to tease these issues out, which is not to disrespect what the Cabinet member has said and what she believes strongly, because she obviously does in terms of what she thinks is being delivered. But our genuine experience on the ground is something very different, and our residents' experiences are very different, and that's what we're trying to communicate. So if our officers and the Cabinet and ourselves as councillors can try to get to resolve this in some way over the next few years, brilliant. You ain't going to fix it overnight, I know that. But if we can identify that and acknowledge that just is an issue, let's try and fix this for our residents, because we can't deliver those services. Goodness knows help us with the rest of the council services. These are the basic services our residents expect and pay their council tax for. So let's try our best to get these to a standard that we can all be very, very proud of.
Thank you. Councillor Bean, and then we'll go to Councillor Keating as seconding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I absolutely support a review, and to be honest, I was quite shocked at 40 bags of rubbish in Brighton Hill. I mean, that's a really significant amount. I think the only thing that I would ask is that as part of the review, we consider how we actually tackle this problem. We don't just sweep the rubbish into the bin. We get to the root cause of why there is so much waste in our borough and tackle the problem, not just remove it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keating, would you like to second?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second this motion. And the thing you need to understand, and I'm speaking to you because you run the council, allegedly. You run the council. Madam Mayor, speaking through you, I need the people opposite to understand the issues. First and foremost, the operatives who wheel the bins and do the picking up of the litter in the estates, they will tell you that they're now spending more time waiting for the van to come and collect them, to move the stuff that they've collected and themselves to the next alleged spot. They spend more time waiting for the van than they do working. They don't want to be waiting. They want to be getting on with their job. But their job has changed. They're now being asked to litter pick in the town because the estates are now being neglected. And how can you improve a service that is being neglected in the estates where our people live? Everybody in the estates are living in houses, and we are deciding to neglect them. And I think that's crazy. I really do think it's crazy. And anybody who suggests that we save money by giving them a van to go to places that they can't go in the streets and the estates, it's crazy. The estates are important. They are our estates, and they're our residents living in them. Most of the vehicles that are currently now used to move them and the stuff they picked up can't get down to the end of the estates or the passages and alleyways and byways on the estates. The vehicles can't get down there. And now we've shuffled them away. Now, whilst I'm on my feet, I must talk about neglected bins, because they too contribute to the detritus and the rubbish abandoned in our estates. I put a complaint in the other day. 10 flats, one lot of bins, not collected for 5 consecutive weeks. Why? Because nobody had looked between the ownership of the estate, on the estate, and the management of it. And the reality is, nobody could get a key to get into the locked bin store. And I got a lovely email back saying, "Thank you, Mr. Councillor Keating, thanks for your complaint. We're looking into it and we'll give you a reply within 10 days. Now, I know, and they know, and the people who send such emails know that for every 5 days, estates are supposed to get a bin collected. After 5 weeks, they weren't collected. But as a consequence of my intervention, I'm glad to say that on week 6, they were emptied. The reality is, if we're giving that kind of service to our residents, then we're failing them. We're simply failing them. And it's happening too often and so regular, it's really worrying. So I second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A few brief words, Councillor Regan, in summing up.
Thank you, and I get the feeling that most people seem to be supporting the motion. But in reference to the cabinet member who obviously comes out of wheedle statements when criticised, in my long experience of trade unions, etc., over the years, if management don't want to do nothing, they always quote health and safety and the Data Protection Act. So it's hard to take anything from the cabinet member who's presided over a total disaster that's the bin service. It continues to be a total disaster. And if she had any respect for herself, she should have resigned over it. Support the motion.
Thank you very much. We'll go straight to the vote, please. Okay, is everyone finished? That's 42 in favour and 10 against, 2 abstentions, so that motion is carried. Thank you. Let's move to the second motion now, which is football pitches, and proposer Councillor Paul Harvey. Thank you. Yes, if anybody needs to leave because they have an interest, please do so. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion is very much about community football. It's about the work that this authority does, and I should say thank you to the officers and thank you to the authority for the work they do in regard to sports and leisure and promoting that in this council and in the borough as a whole. But it's also more importantly in the sense of this motion's meaning what our communities do voluntarily themselves in terms of the local football clubs. What I'm talking about is grassroots football. I'm talking about that football organisations that come out of communities themselves that aren't necessarily as well organised. They are some brilliant examples of very organised, and there are those that are supported by other organisations. But the bottom line is community grassroots football is incredibly important in this borough, however it is organised. Young people get a diversion, they get positive engagement, it involves significant social development. It's amazing physical exercise they can take part in and enjoy. The health benefits, all of the positives that you can think of that can come from youth football. Youth sport, not just youth football, but youth sport is really, really important to us, to parents, and to our borough. So the key parts of the local community that take part in these activities are parents and families, and most of them are part of organising on a Sunday or Saturday morning. Most of them are organising and mucking in consistently alongside the trainers, the head coaches, all of those that do all the work that goes alongside all of the football that's organised. But one of the issues that we've picked up, and one of the things I think I would like to ask the Cabinet to consider in the budget round, is the accessibility and the affordability that they seem to be facing with access to training as opposed to match days. Match days I think everybody could understand in terms of hire a facility and use of facilities on a match day. But the consistent costs associated with training do seem to be imposing obstacles and limitations on those clubs. For example, the Winkleberry Wizards. This is one example where parents are being asked consistently to subsidise, but in a way that a lot of them find an affordability barrier and an accessibility barrier. And so then that becomes an issue of concern. We are seeing perhaps an elitism developing into those that can and those that cannot take part. And so that's worthy of consideration, I think. We don't want to see people put off. Now, I think the issue can be taken under control and we can deal with this as a borough, I really do. And I think there are ways and means that we can get round the issues that many particular parents may face. But what we don't want to see is it become any more of a bigger problem than it is. I think it isn't an issue at the moment that is massively an issue, but it can become, and we're getting the feedback that that is becoming more of an issue, and I don't want it to grow beyond control. What I really want to see, what we all want to see, I think, is encouraging sport, not just football. And I know that's a core part of our council plan. It is a core part of where the cabinet members have been driving. That's not in question. This is an impact, I think, that we're seeing residents feeding back to us of issues they're facing. So in saying that this is an issue they're facing, we're asking the cabinet to think about how we hire out, how we go about costing and developing use of our facilities, use of our open spaces. And we absolutely appreciate this is a strength. This is an absolute strength we should be tapping into. encouraging youth engagement, youth football, youth sport is something we should all take very, and I'm sure we do. But the issue just becomes one of when parents say, actually, I can't afford to do the training. I can afford the match day, but the training is becoming an obstacle. Particularly when they've got to buy the kit as well. And the kits aren't cheap either. Think about the investment that goes into that, particularly got 2 or 3 kids in the context of a family afford sport in our town. So I think the feeling is about that, football in general is a big issue in Basingstoke, and it's not just youth football. We know that football in the town is a very big issue. This could be such a positive aspect, and it is actually. And I think we just ought to just take a step back a moment and recognise that youth football is an incredibly important thing in our town that does huge, huge good, that is brilliant, and we all support it, I'm sure. So that's an important to get out there as a first, absolutely. But to promote it even more, and to promote it even better with our own facilities, in the way I'm asking the Cabinet to think about this in the budget round, is something I think we would like to ask and consider. And I hope the Cabinet will positively do that going forward in the next budget round.
Thank you very much. Councillor Michael Westbrook, do you want to speak now or later? Now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I played football as a child, continued through my teens, where I trained weekly and played matches on most Saturdays and Sundays. I took that love of the game into adulthood and even played five-a-side right up until I was in my mid-50s. Funnily enough, we had a guy turn up one training session driving a fancy new Porsche. He said, "I'd like to join your team." Someone asked, "What do you do for a living, mate?" He said, "I'm a heart surgeon." And we said, "You're in." As 50-year-olds, we needed all the help we could get. Madam Mayor, interest in sports adds an economic value to towns and cities too. I've held season tickets at several football clubs and travelled the length and breadth of the country to watch them play, seeing new places, meeting new people. And if I hadn't been able to be involved as a child, who knows whether that had been the case. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all our residents who give up their spare time to volunteer to help the children of our borough to participate in sport. The Council's ambition is to improve access to opportunities for improving health and wellbeing, and increasing levels of participation is a key strand of the Council's partnership approach to enhancing the health of our residents. The Playing Pitch strategy, building on our success 2015 to 2025, talks about sport being a valuable resource for delivering health, skills, economic development and community cohesion. This strategy sets out what is intended to be achieved within the period to 2025 and feeds into the current local plan. That local plan is now being reviewed. This important issue should play into that review. One of the objectives in the strategy is to drive up participation in sport and physical activity to increase the number and frequency of people taking part on a regular basis, ensuring there are choices that offer low-cost options. We know that being outdoors and getting exercise is good for us all, and we hear the criticisms of our young people, always being on their phones or in their rooms playing computer games. Let's face it, most of us would have been the same if we'd had the technology. We also know that participating in sport is not just about the physical exercise, it's about building social skills, interacting with others, building confidence, camaraderie, team building and making friendships that can last a lifetime. It builds communities with teams such as Winklebury Wizards, Chinham Tigers, Oakley Youth, MFC Popley, Downgrange, Basingstoke Town Colts, Rooksdown Youth, Berg Youth, Tadley Caleaver, Beggarwood Youth and Hatchwarren Phoenix. And not forgetting our village teams with Sherburn St John, Overton Youth and Whitchurch United. And there's probably many more. The passion for football often passes through generations. As for my family and following my retirement from the game, I now spend many a morning and evening facing cold, wet and windy weather, watching my grandson playing football and training. When my grandson started, it wasn't just about the sport and the exercise or even how good he was, but about building his confidence. And I'm sure volunteers and parents will have seen that in their own children. My grandson quickly gained new friends with shared interests and lessons learnt, will stand him in good stead through his education when he starts work and throughout his life. Football continues to be a big part of my life. So in summary, Madam Mayor, it's important that we do all we can to make sport accessible for all children in the borough. And make it accessible by minimising the cost of participating is crucial. We don't want children to lose out as a result of their family's financial situation. Reviewing our policy could provide opportunities to those children whose families can just about afford the cost of the matches, but are losing out when they have to add the cost of training. Looking again at charging for training on our pitches is the right thing to do. Remember, to make it accessible, we need to make it affordable. And I'm happy to second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cousins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to start by...
Could you adjust the microphone, sorry?
Sorry.
Sorry, it's my fellow colleague, technology. Bless him. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to pitch a year in everybody's heads, 2040. Please keep that in your minds. As we project forward to that date, there are children currently in Germany who are emulating their heroes, Bastian Schweinsteiger, Jürgen Klinsmann, Oliver Bierhoff, and even the girls' football, Alexandra Popp, Pauline Bremer and Catherine Heinrich. Over in the UK, children in Basingstoke are doing exactly the same thing. Rachel Yankee, Beth Mead, Steph Houghton, Harry Kane, Dele Alli, and even Basingstoke's own Ben Wright. And my children are involved in that emulation of their heroes. They're looking forward and they're seeing that that's the dream. To walk on those blades of grass at Wembley, to represent their country, score the winning goal, or if you're my eldest Zach, saving that penalty. But it all boils down to how they get involved in the game in the first place. And it all comes down to grassroots football. And I myself have sort of shunned that Premiership world. I prefer non-league football and I support Eastleigh, so I do have a bit of rivalry with Basingstoke. But it all boils down to where players earn their apprenticeship, and it's all done in the grassroots levels all the way through to those heady heights of the Premier League. So focusing on getting the prices right for pitches, not just for match day, but for training is incredibly important because it's their first step on that road to Wembley. Not only is it the health benefits, Madam Mayor, but it's also the teamwork, courage, learning fair play, leadership and respect that are all key in a child's development. Madam Mayor, I gave you that date 2040 to think of at the very beginning. I'm going to pitch an idea, and if somebody wants to have a £1 bet on it, I'm more than happy to take the odds, because I'm saying I'm winning. It's 2040, it's England versus Germany in a World Cup final. It will be 0-0 after 90 minutes. It will be 0-0 after extra time, whatever version they come up with at extra time in that future, and it will go to penalties. Up will step young 22 centre-back Luca Cousins to slot home the fifth penalty. It's 5-4 to England. Up steps the Germans with their last penalty. And there stands the man mountain, Luca Cousins, in goal for England. He dives to his left. He saves. England will win the 2040 World Cup. All those years of hurt over. England will earn that second star above the badge. And it will all be because we took a decision here tonight to have a look, review our pitch fees, not price children out of the market and breed that winning England team for 2040. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Well, thank you. That has to be the most dramatic presentation I've ever heard in this chamber. We'll look out for Luca, and I'm just so sorry our German students have just left. They'd have enjoyed that. Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you from the comments across the chamber as well. We are very supportive of grassroots sport in our communities, especially to support and encourage more activity in young people. This is why we charge children's and tiny football half price or less than the cost of hiring an adult football pitch. In fact, last year, the fee for youth football for pitch hire went up less than the standard 3% increase on other fees and charges. This council does not have a policy of charging youth or adult football clubs for using appropriate open spaces in our parks for training. Football clubs are only charged if they hire a pitch. This ensures there is a contribution to help cover the line marking, maintenance of the pitches, in addition to the opening, closing and cleaning of changing rooms. Some clubs have approached us about using the pitches for training at a lower cost, which is being investigated. Park Run is an incredibly successful event and run by volunteers and predominantly on paths in parks. This means it does not have the same maintenance implications as using a football pitch. It also operates on the same principle as youth football clubs training on open spaces in parks. Boot camps as commercial operators are charged for use of the parks by our events team. I welcome the suggestion to review our fees and charges policy for youth football pitches and would like the Community, Environment and Partnerships Committee to take up this work prior to consideration by the Cabinet. Discussing the surrounding issues in an open meeting where more than one football club can be represented is vital to making sure that we establish the best policy going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We don't have any more speakers as far as I'm aware, so Councillor Harvey, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank the Cabinet Member for her comments and for agreeing to take it to CEP where we can have that open debate and get all those other clubs to make their representations, and hopefully the parents and kids as well, which would be very, very positive. I've got to be honest, I'm proposing this motion, and just me in football, me playing football, my idea of me even... Two left feet, I'm sorry, so it's quite surreal, the idea of me even proposing this motion in terms of me and football. Great to see all young family members and younger members of my family doing football. That's something else entirely. I think the issue around youth sport has been made. I think the issue around the importance of it, also the quality of some of the facilities. We've got a new 3G pitch in Basingstoke in the ward. Great facilities. It's just the accessibility of them. So again, I thank the Cabinet Member for acknowledging that and how we might look at it at CEP. If we could have looked at, Madam Mayor, if it's possible in terms of the invitations that might go out so people know about the agenda item, and that way at least we can encourage attendance and get a very good rounded debate when that does happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I sense a sort of consensus, so shall we just vote by a show of hands? All those in favour of the motion? Okay, I think that's agreed. So that motion is carried. Thank you. Item 16, questions from members of the council. Can I invite... Do we need some people back in? We've got some people coming back in. I'm told to wait for people to come back in. But there's somebody just going. Yeah, there you go. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, we're nearly there, Let's move to the first question from Councillor Lovegrove to the Cabinet Member for Environment and Enforcement. Councillor Lovegrove.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just hope I'm on side in this particular debate. But I'd like to put the question as per order paper, on the order paper, with the addition of the word please at the end. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Response, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, apologies, I wasn't, due to business, I wasn't made aware of this and wasn't told, so hence you've not had a reply, so my apologies. When that's brought to my attention, I know that I had a meeting this morning, I discussed it with officers, I know officers have spoken to you, Councillor Lovegrove, they've provided you with a detailed email as well, but just to be clear, when Councillor Atkin answered the question on my behalf, as I was unable to make the last council meeting, he did give some very detailed information about the policy, but just to expand on that, as explained by Councillor Atkin, the council policy on bin replacement is that if the bin is over 2 years old when it's damaged, then it's the responsibility of the resident to replace the bin. The only exception is if the bin has fallen in the back of the lorry or it's clear that the damage has been caused as a result of inappropriate use by the crews. Wheeled bins have a lifespan of around 7 to 10 years, and as the bin gets older, they do tend to get weaker and will eventually fail. This often happens when they are being emptied, as this is when the most stress is applied to the bin. Under the policy, it's the residents' responsibility to ensure that the bin that they are using is fit for purpose and can withstand the stresses of emptying. Many of the bins issued to residents in Basingstoke and Dean when the wheel bin service was rolled out, so that's back in the 1990s, so they're now nearly 30 years old. I mean, many bins have lasted around 20 years. So whilst the initial response to the resident was to apply the council policy, as Councillor Atkin indicated, having now looked at that, I can see from our records that she wasn't happy with that. The response was escalated to a service manager. It was then reviewed at length, and they decided that there was an element of doubt as to exactly how the damage had been caused. So they reconsidered it, and on that case, and it's done on a case-by-case basis, and the merits of each case are looked at, they did agree to give an exception and issued her with a new bin, as you say in your question. Service managers can give that discretion where necessary, but as I say, it is on a case-by-case basis. So I hope that answers the question, and apologies you didn't get a response before.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Lovegrove?
Yeah, so it's just that there are continuously damages to the hinges of bins. I just asked the portfolio member if they could consider waiving the present policy of charging for replacements, which seems being interpreted somewhat flexible. I understand you've got flexible thing, but it doesn't state that from when on, if you phone up the control in the council offices. So could the portfolio member please waive the costs for the damaged bins until they've resorted to some conclusion on this, because it isn't clear. It's still cloudy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Aegis.
Thank you. I think what you're asking is whether we can amend the policy, and the answer to that, in my view, is no. You talk about flexibility. There is an element where a manager can apply a degree of, I suppose flexibility is the wrong word, it's a discretion, but that's looked at on a case-by-case basis, and as I say, many bins, so no, we can't amend the policy.
What's the straight answer? Question 2. Councillor Tomlin to the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Natural Environment. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, just the question as per the order paper. Thank you.
Councillor Raffel.
Madam Mayor, can I thank Councillor Tomlin for his question. It's given me the opportunity to clarify matters. The outcome for the call of sites will be published in the Strategic Housing and Employment Land Availability Assessment, known as SHELA, in December. This will outline the key issues in relation to the sites, including constraints. This will not deal with site allocation. We will then have, just before that document is published, a member drop-in session so that we can all look at the sites that might concern us and our wards before the document is published, and that will be either the end of November or the beginning of December. Thereafter, the suitability of those promoted sites for development will be considered through a detailed site assessment process, and at the same time, and overlaying this process and running in tandem with it, are the issue, very exciting issue, of housing numbers and the issues and options for how development should be spread across the borough. And so to answer Councillor Tomlin's question when he wrote, I have been informed the council will be making decisions on which new sites it will include in the reviewed local plan this November. I regret to inform him, Madam Mayor, he's been misinformed. It's not happening then. Then moving on to the second part of that question, dealing with Upper Cufford Farm. As far as that is concerned, the site was contained within the local plan, and it isn't appropriate for the local plan to go into detail about site layout. That is entirely a matter for the planning application process.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Tomlin? No? Okay, thank you very much. Question 3 is another one from Councillor Tomlin, and again to the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Natural Environment. Councillor.
Yeah, as the order paper. Thank you.
Councillor O'Fell.
Madam Mayor, can I again thank Councillor Tomlin for this question, because it has raised a very pertinent point that has come to our attention. We were obviously aware that when the local plan was created, we had Hampshire County Council as a consultee, and they assured us through their representations that the proposed modifications to various junctions on the A33 would deal with capacity sufficiently for all the proposed developments that are outlined in the local plan. And then, of course, in this recent planning application, they have raised an objection on capacity grounds, as I understand it, to the A33. So what is going on is the question that he rhetorically asks, and I rhetorically ask it on our behalf. We are trying to find out whether that means that the County Council was misinformed in its representations to us 3 years ago, or whether someone is misinformed now, or whether something stranger is going afoot in the County Council. I will hopefully provide all members with the answer in due course, but rest assured we do need to know the answer for obvious reasons.
Thank you very much. No supplementary? Okay, thank you. Right, moving on. We have questions to the chair of a committee or the cabinet. There are minutes of 16 meetings listed here. Are there any questions? And if so, please would you name the meeting and the page to which the question refers and the person to whom the question is directed. And they must take a form of a question and not a statement or opinion. Are there any questions at all? No? Okay. In that case, we have no confidential items, and so no need to exclude the press or public. So that concludes our meeting tonight. Thank you very much.